2019 meeting of the Raymore City Council to order. Mrs. Warner, may we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Serko.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
If I could have everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In reviewing the agenda, we have no presentations or awards or personal appearances scheduled for this evening, so we will move directly into staff reports. Mr. Fearborn?
Thank you, Your Honor. I would ask Mr. Krass to make a staff report for Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. You have my written report. Just wanted to update council that last Friday we had our annual snow preparedness meeting with the crew. Want to thank the Parks and Rec Department for letting us use Recreation Park as a kind of a skills course. I have a number of new drivers this year that have not been behind the wheel before. Also been working with the communications department on some public service announcements that'll be out on our Facebook page in the near future. So that concludes my report.
Any questions of Mr. Krass? Mr. Fearborn?
Thank you, Mr. Krass. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make a report for Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I too have submitted a written report, just a couple of quick highlights. If you haven't driven by TB Hanna, I would recommend you do so. The station house is nearly complete. We're doing punch list items, but it looks almost identical to the picture we submitted you earlier this year. It looks fantastic, so it's a good part of a project that we'll continue to talk about later this evening. Also, Centerview was able to host the Missouri-Kansas Parks and Recreation Executive Forum this past month. Over 40 Parks and Rec directors, administrative personnel met for a two-day symposium here at Centerview, so we were happy to host that. We had two national speakers come in and talk about cost recovery, minimum wage, things of that nature that affect departments across both states. So Centerview just continues to be a great venue. Raymore Rec Park hosted the Raymore Rumble disc golf tournament we do every year. Lots of folks coming in. Weather was a little windy, but they had a great time. Usually always have a good turnout for that particular rental tournament. And I know in the next staff report you'll hear some more, but I personally wanted to thank my park board members and my council, those of you that attended or volunteered to work the event this past weekend, and then I'll let Ms. Harmer talk about the rest of it. So with that concludes my staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Mustine. Any questions? Mr. Fearborn?
Thank you, Mr. Mustine. I would ask Mr. Icky to make a report for communications.
Thank you, sir. I certainly would not be able to do it justice, and so I would like to call Mrs. Harmer up to give the report for the communications department.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. I wanted to update you on our fundraising. We had the Vintage Circus Gala on Saturday at Centerview, and I had made some estimates on what we could make. I was banking on selling out and having 150 guests. We didn't quite do that, so we were short a few people, but I am happy to say that we made our goal. Our goal was $20,000 to purchase the treehouse portion of the inclusive playground, Hawk's Nest, at Hawk Ridge Park, and we made $21,023.25. So I would like to sincerely thank all of you that donated your time, donated items, made monetary donations to our park fund, and attended as guests. So it was a great time. I only heard good things, and I know that I feel like it was just like my wedding day. It's all a blur, and I didn't get to talk to anybody. But I'm also, I want to call out Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Serko, and Mr. Holman. Thank you so much for taking the pies to the face for a few extra $100 that we raised there. So again, if anyone didn't attend, we'll be announcing this I'll put out a press release in the morning with our total and more details about the event. And if anyone wants to learn more about Hawks Nest, raymore.com/Hawks Nest for anyone that might be listening.
Your eyes are not being held open by toothpicks, so I assume you've had a bit of a chance to recover.
A little bit, yes.
Excellent report. Any questions of Mrs. Harmer? Mr. Barber?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I unfortunately wasn't able to attend, but was there a video of the pies in the face?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Is it posted somewhere?
Not yet.
Oh.
It will be.
Okay, well, because you might do a fundraiser on that, donations to post it, so, and personal copies, so just FYI.
Ms. Abdelgawad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Not a question, just congratulations. It was a fun event. I heard from everyone who I knew there that they enjoyed it. It was kind of a different take on the usual gala, and it was a lot of fun. So nice work, and I'm sure I've been in your shoes. You're enjoying a minute of rest.
Any other questions? I would add congratulations to this council. Everyone that could participate did participate in a number of fashions. We had a couple that just had other commitments. Otherwise, I know they would have been there and certainly were in heart and spirit. So it is an item that's near and dear to all of us, and very well done, Mrs. Harmer. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Ms. Harmer. A few items from myself to the council. A reminder that next week the work session will be a joint work session with the TIF Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission. It does begin at 6 o'clock. It will be at Centerview. It will be broadcast, and it will be taped. It'll be our first excursion into using the new equipment that the council approved for over there for meetings in the event that we have them there. We will be serving dinner prior to the presentation. Again, the presentation is on Economic Development 101. The council has at your places this evening the finalized and completed ordinance for Bill 3498, which will be before you for consideration under new business this evening. We did do those, we did put it out to bid today on through a competitive process on the market. We'll be reporting all of the news relative to that in just a little bit. I'll withhold my enthusiasm on it. Also, a reminder that the week after next, Monday is Veterans Day, so there will be no meeting of the council on that evening. That concludes staff reports tonight, sir.
Thank you. And just maybe a little bit of a follow-up on the next work session at Centerview starting at 6. The reason you're feeding us is not just the kindness of our heart. We're probably going to go well past 2 hours on that due to the presentation. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct, sir.
Thank you very much. Any other questions of staff? We have no committee reports this evening, and therefore we will move into the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion at this time to address the 7 items on the consent agenda. Mr. Barber.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I move that we approve the consent agenda to include the following items. Item A, City Council minutes, October 14, 2019. Item B, Hawk Ridge Park improvements, project acceptance and final payment. Item C, fire hydrant replacement project acceptance and final payment. Item D, Centerview AV production system and outdoor speaker project acceptance and final payment. Item E, reappointment of Eric Bowie to the Ward 1 seat on Planning and Zoning Commission. Item F, reappointment of Calvin Eklund to Ward 4 seat on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Item G, appointment of Cole Young to Ward 3 seat on the Art Commission. I guess that's it.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion at this time? As there is no discussion, can I have all those in favor of the motion please raise your hand? Motion passes 8-0. Should note for the record that Mr. Young is in attendance tonight, sir. We thank you for your service and for attending. We'll now move on to the unfinished business portion of the meeting. We'll start with item A, which is the adoption of the fiscal year 2020 Raymore City budget. May I have the second reading of Bill 3493 by title only, Mrs. Warner?
The second reading of Bill 3493 by title only, and an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving the fiscal year 2020 budget.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3493.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Barber.
I move that we approve Bill 3493, adoption of FY 2020 city budget.
Second.
I do have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can I have all those in favor of the motion please raise your hand? Motion passes unanimously 8-0. Moving on to item B, which is a vacation of easements, Cunningham at Creekmore. May I have the second reading of Bill 3489 by title only, Mrs. Warner?
The second reading of Bill 3489 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, vacating easement rights, including 4 separate temporary street right-of-way easements granted by Cooper Land Development, Inc.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3489.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Barber.
I move that we approve Bill 3489, vacation of easements, Cunningham at Creekmore.
I'll second.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can I have all those in favor of the motion please raise your hand? Motion passes unanimously 8-0. We will now move on to item C, which is Hawk Ridge Park sod and hydro seed. Ms. Warner, may I have the second reading of Bill 3487 by title only, please?
The second reading of Bill 3487 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the installation of sod and application of hydro seed in designated construction areas at Hawk Ridge Park with Welch Silt Fence and Erosion Control, LLC.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3487.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Barber.
I move that we approve Bill 3487, Hawk Ridge Park sod and hydro seed.
I'll second.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can I have all those in favor of the motion please raise your hand? Motion passes unanimously 8-0. We will now move on to item D, which is the companion budget amendment for the previous item. Ms. Warner, may we have the second reading of Bill 3488 by title only, please?
The second reading of Bill 3488 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing an amendment to the fiscal year 2019 capital budget, Stormwater Sales Tax Fund 46, to provide funding for the sod and hydroseal application at Hawk Ridge Park.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3488.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Barber.
I move that we approve Bill 3488, budget amendment, Hawk Ridge Park sod and hydro seed.
I'll second.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can I have all those in favor of the motion please raise your hand? Motion passes unanimously 8-0. We'll now move on to item E, which is a budget amendment, fiscal year 2019 operating adjustments. Ms. Warner, may we have the second reading of Bill 3492 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3492 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the fiscal year 2019 operating budget.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3492.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Barber.
I move that we approve Bill 3492, budget amendment, fiscal year 2019 operating adjustments.
I'll second.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can I have all those in favor of the motion please raise your hand? Motion passes unanimously 8-0. We'll now move on to item F, which is another budget amendment for fiscal year 2019 Vehicle and Equipment Replacement Fund. Ms. Warner, can we have the second reading of Bill 3494 by title only, please?
The second reading of Bill 3494 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the fiscal year 2019 budget.
Mr. Feuerborn, you have a little bit further information for us.
Thank you, sir. At the conclusion of the last meeting, one of the council members did ask me relative to the vehicles that were going to be purchased with this. I want to give that council member and the council in general assurances that we will not be repeating the mistakes of the past, just so everybody's aware. I won't go into details of the manufacturers, et cetera, but we will be shifting manufacturers on the purchase of these new trucks.
Any questions of staff? At this time, I would entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3494.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Barber.
I move that we approve Bill 3494, Budget Amendment Fiscal Year 2019 Vehicle and Equipment Replacement Fund.
I'll second.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can I have all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously 8-0. The final item of unfinished business this evening is item G, which is establishing stop signs at Samantha Street and Point Lane at Washington Street. Ms. Warner, may we have the second reading of Bill 3490 by title only, please?
The second reading of Bill 3490 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending Schedule 4 of Title 3, Traffic Codes by establishing a stop sign within the city limits of Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to dispose of Bill 3490.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Barber.
I move that we approve Bill 3490, establishing stop signs on listed streets.
I'll second.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can I have all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously 8-0. We will now move on to the new business section of the meeting. First item of new business this evening is Bill 3497, which is a request for rezoning of property at Grant Drive and Adams Street. This item does call for a public hearing. At this time, I will open the public hearing and ask for a staff report. Mr. Fearborn?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I would ask Mr. Cataret to make the staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Bill 3497 is a request that was filed by Zimmerman Properties to reclassify the zoning of a 3.83 acre tract of land from its current C2, which is a general commercial designation, to R3B, which is an apartment community residential district classification. This property is located at the southeast corner of Adams Street and Grant Drive. It's just to the south of the Point Townhomes on the north side of 58 Highway. As this property does require a public hearing, it was advertised for this evening. I do want to enter into the record the notices that we sent to the adjoining property owners, the notice of publication in the Journal, our Unified Development Code, the application that was filed, our growth management plan, the staff report submitted to you this evening, and the conceptual site plan for the development. If this project, if the bill this evening is approved, the applicant does desire to construct a 48-unit age-restricted apartment building upon the property. The project's known as Grant Park Villas. If you recall back at a work session in September, the details of the project were presented to the council at your work session. On the rezoning, a good neighbor meeting was held. We did have 5 of the neighboring residents attend that meeting. That was held back in September. And a list of the questions they asked and the responses that were provided are included in the staff report. Access to this property would be gained off of Adams Street for any development that would occur on the property. And if the rezoning is approved, the next steps for a project upon the property has to have a final plat, and then it would have to have site plan approval for an apartment building to be located on the property. The Planning Commission submitted proposed findings of fact on the rezoning request. And at the Commission's October 15th meeting, they did by a 7-0 vote, move to accept the findings of fact and forward this request for rezoning to the City Council with a recommendation of approval. It was subject to one condition. They do require that a Type A landscape screen be maintained along the eastern property line, which would be between the subject property and the Rambo Woods subdivision. And that could be either through use of existing vegetation or the addition of new vegetation. We have single-family homes in the Rambo Woods subdivision that do need to be buffered from any development on this property. I did include the minutes from the October 15th Planning Commission discussion on the request. And I do note the applicant, Jeff Beckler, with Zimmerman Properties, is here this evening. He presented to you at your work session, if you recall, as well as their project engineer, Michael Osborne, is here if you have any questions of the applicant. That would conclude staff report, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Catterett. Mr. Fearborn, did you have something to add?
Yes, I believe we have not yet read the title of the bill, and we need to have that in.
My mistake, sir.
Not at all, sir.
Ms. Warner, would you correct that for us, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
The first reading of Bill 3497 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, amending the zoning map from C2 General Commercial District to R3B Apartment Community Residential District, a 3.8-acre tract of land located south of Grant Drive, east of Adams Street in Raymore, Cass County, Missouri.
And that one is my mistake, and Ms. Warner is way too polite to correct me. Thank you, sir, for the oversight. I would like to offer, we'll open the comments to the public, but I'd like to start with the applicant if they would like to come forward first and address the council. Please state your name and address for the record, sir.
Jeff Beckler, 1329 East Lark Street in Springfield, Missouri. Mayor Pro Tem and council, appreciate the opportunity again to come before you. And Grant Park Villas, we're seeking that R3B zoning for a 48-unit project to get 55 and up age restricted. I don't, unless you want me to go into the project again, I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't want to be too redundant because I've been before you guys a couple of times and it's been very positive. So if you guys have any questions for me, just.
Any questions of the applicant? Thank you, sir. We do reserve the right to recall you if we have some.
Absolutely.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you.
At this time, anyone from the public who would like to speak on this matter, if you would come forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on this matter, and we'll move to council discussion. Any questions of staff? Further discussion? Then I would entertain a motion at this time to dispose of Bill 3497.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Barber.
I move that we approve Bill 3497, rezoning Grant Drive and Adams Street.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, can I have all those in favor of the motion please raise your hand? Motion passes 8-0. Move on to item B, which is the TB Hanna Station site work project. May we please have the initial reading of Bill 3495. Mrs. Warner, I do learn from my mistakes.
The first reading of Bill 3495 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with R.L. Phillips Construction, Inc. for the TB Hanna Station site work project, city project number 19-276-203A, in the amount of $234,250, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Mr. Fearborn, do we have a staff report on this item?
Thank you, sir. I would ask Mr. Mustine to make the staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem, Council, it is good to be here in front of you tonight recommending this contract. This is the general site work for TB Hanna Station. So this would include general landscaping, grading, concrete work, the piece that kind of pulls all of the other puzzle pieces of TB Hanna together. This is the one that will bring that project home for us. So we have competitively bid this out, and we received 3 bids. We know that R.L. Phillips is the lowest, and we believe that they are the best bidder for this project. They currently are the bidder, or are the contractors for our station house renovation. So we've got a great working relationship with them and feel like this will be a seamless transition into the next project. So with your approval, the Park Board has already seen this and approved this unanimously and recommend a contract with R.L. Phillips for the TB Hanna site work. And that concludes staff report.
Any questions of Mr. Mustine? Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I trust that you're already on top of this, Nathan, but I feel like I should say this because it's been a concern voiced to me. I noticed in the contract there is tree removal,
Yes.
and a lot of the people in that area and who go to that park are concerned about the trees going away.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about the plan for tree removal and how many will be missing and how many might remain.
Excellent question. There are 10 trees that are scheduled to be removed. They are hazardous trees that would be removed regardless of whether we were doing this improvement or not. And a couple of them there are in the area that where the spray ground would go or the playground would go. And I would tell you a couple of them are walnut trees. They're dropping walnuts right over the top of the playground, so they need to come down. And then the others are silver maples and just unsightly trees. We are very much tree people. We're protecting the big pretty ones, so you don't have to worry about that.
To that answer, I know that you are an arborist, so obviously we're removing some of the mature trees because of disease or age and placement, that kind of thing. Do we have plans as part of the landscaping to add in some newer and younger trees in that plan?
On the west side where the playground and the spray ground are, no, we do not, for obvious reasons of the pump process of the spray ground and just the cleaning and stuff. On the other side, on the east side where the farmer's market is, if need be, we will add some. We kind of want to wait until the trail's in and get an eye for where we like shade and where we can add that. So to answer your question truthfully, no, we don't have any intentions of planting trees, but we're always looking to plant trees.
It makes sense to kind of wait and see what the final project's going to look like before we do that. But thank you, sir. I appreciate the answer. Other questions of Mr. Musteen? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions for staff, I would entertain a motion at this time to dispose of Bill 3495.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Barber.
I move that we approve Bill 3495, TB Hanna Station Site Work Project.
Second.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can I have all those in favor of the motion please raise your hand? Motion passes unanimously 8-0. Item C on the agenda this evening is special obligations bonds, refunding bonds. I should note that the mayor has declared this item as an emergency read this evening due to time constraints, and I believe that the staff report will further explain this in detail. Can we please have the initial reading of Bill 3498 by title only, Mrs. Warren?
The first reading of Bill 3498 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of $5,870,000 principal amount of tax-exempt special obligation refunding bonds, Series 2019 of the City of Raymore, Missouri, and authorizing certain other documents and actions by the city and declaring this bill as an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Fearborn, I am sure there is a report on this one.
Yes, there is, sir. Multiple reports. We'll begin with our special financial advisor, Mr. Todd Goffey, and I will follow that up. And we also have Mr. Sid Douglas here, who is our bond counsel. He's working as our safety net on this particular item in keeping with the circus theme from Saturday night. So, Mr. Goffey.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and council members. As you may know, earlier today at 11 o'clock, we went through a competitive bidding process and received 4 responses for the purchase of the bonds. The rates range from 2.29% up to 2.62%, so a little bit of a spread there, but certainly we were pleased with the low interest rate. There's been a lot of work that Mr. Fearborn and staff has done leading up to this point with a bond rating process that we went through with Moody's. There's a lot of details for the bond prospectus, or what we call the official statement, that has to be prepared as you're getting ready to offer public securities. And that's very timely that those be done. So certainly compliments to your staff on working through that process. Are you going to cover the level of savings?
Absolutely.
Mr. Goffey, it's always good to have you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Goffey? Your service to the city and your reports have been impeccable, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Some background on this for the council's consideration. These bonds refund the bonds that were issued for the Hubach Hill North Cass Parkway TDD. As the council is aware, any of the costs associated with this particular debt service, when that TDD does see development, then the city, even though these bonds are in the city's name now, the city is refunded once development occurs down there for the amount that we have paid in for the debt service on these. The debt service on these is currently a commitment, an annual appropriation, and will continue to be an annual appropriation out of the Capital Improvement Sales Tax Fund. My concern that I expressed to you during the proposed budget presentation is that over time, the debt service payments that we're making on these bonds have ratcheted up, and it's beginning to be a considerable draw on the Capital Improvement Sales Tax Fund, which is taking away from projects that we're able to do. This was a perfectly timed refunding. I want to thank Mr. Goffey, Mr. Douglas, Ms. Williams in the back. They are constantly watching for these sorts of opportunities in our debt service program. In this particular instance, we knew some time ago that we were going to be in a call period and have been for quite some time. The issue being, it's not as simple as just, oh, we're there, let's go ahead and refund them if we can. The key is the timing of it to take advantage of the market. One of the reasons this is before you as an emergency read is because once we get to November 1, the market starts to stack up towards the end of the year, and so you don't get as competitive amount of bids as you would in this sort of a situation. So we are taking maximum advantage of this particular issuance. As Mr. Goffey indicated, the savings percent on this refunding, if approved by the council, will be 28% over what we currently have. Mr. Goffey would tell you that when you're looking at doing a refunding, you want to be north of 3%. If you're above 3%, you're in a good place to be for a refunding and saving the city some money. Obviously, we're considerably north of 3% with 28. What does that translate into dollars? The 2.29 interest rate that we're getting on this translates into a savings of what we would be paying over the course of the rest of this particular issuance of $1,736,616.40. The net present value of that is $1,757,312.71. For fiscal year 2020 alone, as we're going into it, we had budgeted in the debt service fund out of the Capital Improvement Fund for this issuance. The debt service payment was going to be $606,200. That will be reduced next year to $335,745.63, which means there's $270,454.37 in that fund that we would not have had if we had not taken advantage of this refunding next year alone. Another very favorable outcome of this is each time we do a bond issuance like this, we have to reaffirm our general credit rating as well as the credit rating on this particular issuance. We have been reaffirmed at AA2, which most folks would tell you is as high as we can get with as big as we are. We're going to have to grow some more and get some more assessed valuation in there to actually come up from the AA2. We're doing everything we can to convince them that we're bigger than we look. When you're doing a special obligation bond such as this one, and it's subject to an annual appropriation as this is, that general credit rating is usually notched down. So you don't see the exact same credit rating on this. But in this particular case, it was only notched down to a AA3. Mr. Goffey would tell you he sees many instances where it goes down a couple of clicks. Because of the strength of our interview process with Moody's, this only went down one click, so we're very, very pleased with that. We have asked for the emergency reading tonight to take advantage of the time frame that's involved in getting these in and getting the actual drawdown on the bonds taking place as shortly after November 1 as we possibly can. I am pleased to announce that, as the council knows, most emergency readings have to be, the second reading of that has to be the bill in its entirety. Our charter section 3.13 exempts that particular requirement and only requires a reading by title only on the second reading for land use and bond issue purposes. So our second reading only needs to be the title only. So hopefully we can get everybody out of here before it starts snowing tonight, because it's a really long ordinance. And that concludes staff report on this item.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Douglas, is a very comprehensive report, but would you like to add anything? We made you drive all this way. I thought you might just want to say a few words. We appreciate you being here and your service and your firm service to the city, sir. Thank you very much. Any questions of staff? At this time, I would entertain a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3498.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Barber.
I move that we approve Bill 3498, Special Obligation Refunding Bonds, Series 2019.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, can I have all those in favor of the motion please raise your hand? Bill passes unanimously 8-0. And Mr. Fearborn stole my thunder, but as this has been declared an emergency read by the mayor, we will now move on to the second reading of the bill. And I think I will note, just for the record one more time, sir, that the Raymore City Charter is specific when it comes to council procedure on emergency reads for bond refunding. And as such, this bill, thanks to Mrs. Warner, will not be read in its entirety, but will be, again, by title only. And Ms. Warner, may we please have the second reading of Bill 3498 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3498 by title only, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of $5,870,000 principal amount of tax-exempt special obligation refunding bonds, Series 2019 of the City of Raymore, Missouri, and authorizing certain other documents and actions by the city and declaring this bill as an emergency.
Thank you. Mr. Fearborn, we just had the staff report on this item, but is there anything you would like to add at this time?
Only that I'm giddy, sir.
It is exceptional news that we have got such great in-house staff and our contract counsel firms to help us out with this, and that we're going to realize this kind of savings, much savings, and so quickly as well, sir. Thank you very much. Any questions of staff? And at this time, I would entertain a motion to dispose of the second and final reading of Bill 3498.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Barber.
I move to approve Bill 3498, Special Obligation Refunding Bonds, Series 2019.
I'll second.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion? Can I have all those in favor of the motion please raise your hand? Motion passes 8-0. Item D on the agenda is an award of contract to Dayco Painting for exterior painting of City Hall. Ms. Warner, may we please have the first reading of Bill 3496 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3496 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Dayco Painting for the exterior painting and upgrades to City Hall in the amount of $28,152.
Mr. Fearborn, I'm sure we have a staff report on this item.
We do indeed, sir. I would ask Mr. Eakey to make the staff report on this agenda item.
Thank you, sir. The item before council this evening is an award of contract for the exterior painting at City Hall. The building has not had any significant paint or repairs to the exterior since its construction. Dayco Painting was the lowest and best bid that we received from the three companies for this project. In addition to painting the white surfaces around City Hall, as part of that pricing, Dayco will also be cleaning and sealing all of the masonry work to further protect it. In addition, they'll also be painting the front archway from its original tan to the dark bronze color that would match the storefront. The goal there is that we can remove the darker bronze letters, paint that archway the dark bronze to match the storefront, which would also match Centerview, and then we can have a similar lettering, the silver lettering, that would match in the two buildings here on Municipal Circle would have a kind of a mirroring effect. Additionally, with the savings, we're also able to add some additional signage with the logo in the lobby, and so we're really pleased and feel like this project will do a great job of improving kind of the first impression as folks walk into City Hall.
Good news. Very nice report, sir. Any questions of Mr. Icky or staff? Ms. Abdelgawad.
It was a little alarming, I think, to see the huge difference in the bid amounts. Any explanation?
A couple of reasons. Dayco Painting specializes in painting of commercial facilities, whereas several of the other contractors are contracting companies, and so part of their bid and their explanation was they wanted to do more contracting repairs and updates to other areas of the facility that at this time we don't feel are necessary.
Let's see a hand up down here. Mr. Burke? No? Any other questions? At this time, I would entertain a motion to dispose of the first reading of Bill 3496.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem,
Mr. Barber.
I move that we approve Bill 3496, award a contract to Dayco Painting.
I'll second.
There is a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, can I have all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Motion passes 8-0, unanimous. We will now move into the public comments section of the meeting. Anyone who wishes to speak may proceed to the podium and provide your name and address for the record. Please keep your comments to 5 minutes. And to my friends that are here for the American government classes, this is your opportunity to come and ask any questions that you would like to ask about your report or anything else within the city. It's not painful and we don't bite, I promise. No one. It's your chance to be on TV as well. I should add that part. All 5 people watching would see you. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public comments section and move on to council member comments. I think I'm going to start with Councilmember Behrens tonight, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I think I'll start off with probably what's on a lot of our minds is just thanking everybody that was involved in the gala that happened here Saturday night. Had a great time. One of the prevailing things I heard, Ms. Harmer, is that everybody was looking forward to the next time we do this. So I'll just plant that little seed there. So I hope that we do this again in the future, and I would expect to see a lot of the same people back because they seem to really enjoy it. Moving along, Mr. Crass, I will note that you were the first person this year to mention snow, so I'd like that to be in the record, sir. I've held off mentioning that all year, so we'll see what that brings this week. And then a lot of stuff to go through here tonight. We'll say congratulations to Mr. Bowie, Mr. Ackland of the P&Z, Cole Young on the Arts Commission. I'm sure some of you will speak at great lengths to this, but just really, really happy with what we did here with restructuring our bonds and our bond debt. So hats off to all those involved, and thank you very much for that. We're going to see some significant savings there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I'm not going to waste everybody's time. I'll just say I echo what Mr. Berenson just said. Fabulous gala. Awesome to save over $1.5 million, and thanks to everyone who participated in the gala, both donating and being there and volunteering, and welcome our new volunteers and volunteers who were signing up for a second round for some of our boards and commissions.
Mr. Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. And thank you for conducting the meeting tonight. Did a good job, except for that one little boo-boo, but we won't. It's on the record and it's on video, but no one will remember it. So, Melissa, great job. Thank you. Thank you for being patient with me, too, also. She knows what I'm talking about on that. Mr. Fairborn, I want to extend a big thank you to you and your staff. We passed the budget, and I always ask you this every year, but how long have you been working on next year's budget?
CIP has already begun, sir.
Yeah, I thought that. But this is a real good night for you, because we were going to save $1.7 million. We passed the budget. We got the payment that we make for those bonds is almost half. It's really a good night. I hope that makes the papers, and that's really good news. And I hope we don't spend that savings on salt. I just hope that's not what we have to spend it on. So, thank you.
Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I guess I can just chime in on what some of the other council members have said. Again, yeah, I hope we don't have to waste a lot of money on salt. Hopefully it's not as bad as they assume it will be. But the gala went very well. Melissa did a fantastic job, and there was a lot of work put in to talk to a lot of people to get a lot of this stuff to get through and put together for that night. And I know it went real well. Not as many people, but we actually went higher than our expectations on the money, and that's a good thing. Thank you for allowing me, along with Mr. Fearborn and Mr. Holman, to get pie in my face, have it taped, so to go out for the world to see. I didn't see it on Fox 4 yet, but I think it's coming still, so that still might happen, trust me. But I think we had a great night. It's a great thing for the city. The people turned out, and it went real well. And my very good thank you to, I know he's probably not watching, but Mr. Mark Alford. He did a fantastic job, and he really loves the city of Raymore. He's got a lot of high expectations coming up for the city of Raymore when it comes to Fox 4 News and stuff, so that's a good thing. He loves us. He wants to come out here and do other things and just keep on putting us on the map, and that's a plus. But to Mr. Fearborn, our city manager, and his staff, and all the staff, again, saving lots of money on this budgeting, getting the budget done and passed, and putting it together the way you do. You make it so much easier on us because you have all the information, you have all the numbers, and it's very simple to make a few small changes when we do because it's laid out so well. To the young people here, you didn't want to come up and say anything, but you could have. But it's not hard, like we said. It's really fun. You'll find out as you get older. But again, that's about it. Chimed on what everybody else says, and thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Well, I had some things to say, but they've all been said. But the gala, I had a good time, and I was registering people as they were coming in. And that was, I mean, even though I was working, it was fun. It was fun to see all the people having a good time. And Mark Alford was very infectious with the crowd, getting people to dig deeper. And that really was a big coup because his personality got several extra $1,000 when he was working the crowd. So it was great.
Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I'm just simply going to say ditto to what everybody else has said before. They've said it certainly every bit as good or if not better than I can. So that's all I have this evening.
And Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the gala. I'm sorry I missed the festivities and especially the pies in the face. If I'm still able to, I'll pay a little extra to give it a couple more pies in the face. If there's an opportunity for Kevin and I to join in on that, we may. So, sorry.
I'm sure they'll take your money.
There you go. Excellent. And also to commend staff and Mr. Fearborn and the gentleman as well on our bond issue. That's excellent. And to echo, hopefully don't spend it on salt, but some other valuable and much needed areas within the city that concerns our residents. I did want to also thank the volunteers for the different boards and commissions that are serving either for the first time or coming back on those programs. Thank you for that, their volunteerism in that aspect. But also wanted to talk on a new, something different, transportation. I didn't want to, it's not necessarily a committee report, but just kind of update back brief on a couple of weeks ago, I went and finally got a chance to actually see the politics that goes on with voting and prioritizing projects with the Regional Transportation Committee. The workshop that was held, I believe, on the 17th was kind of a 4-hour, 6-hour window of opportunity for those to go in there on those various committees to lend their vote, to the different projects that are up for the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan. So I got to see the frustrations that Mr. Crass and his staff goes through, and as well as myself, and sitting on those meetings on trying to be the biggest voice in the room to get the vote, but yet you're surrounded by those who are concerned with the loop and concerned with the hydro, whatever you want to call it, St. Louis concerned with. But we have our concerns down here in the Cass County area, so that was an exercise in and of itself in that perspective. But one thing I did notice on our social media, I saw, oddly enough, that we're hosting the Highway 58 improvements by MoDOT, but it's not the area that we would think it is. It's actually hosting the public hearing on the roundabouts to the east of us for Ward Avenue, Prairie Lane, and the third one, 291 improvements. And I believe it's, please, correct me or educate me if I'm speaking incorrectly. It's a hearing, but not necessarily a presentation, but more so a workshop setting.
It is one of the required public hearings that MoDOT has to have when they're doing improvements like this. I did notice the title of it was 58 Highway and 291. The only thing they've approached us with is the two roundabouts, sir.
I see. Okay. Well, yeah, that's where I was concerned with, because it does list the three intersections on it, and it for those who want, it's just to come and see what the designs look like and give their input to MoDOT. It's not necessarily the city of Raymore, but it's MoDOT. They're here to present, as you stated, for that perspective. So still an area of interest and an area of concern that has been raised by our residents going east of the city, especially for our school district and the middle school that's out that way, and the different accidents and things that have happened on those two particular stretches of roadway. So good to see momentum in that perspective. We've had briefs on that as well already. So other good things to come in the future, but we'll have opportunity to speak to those at a later date. We'll be excited to have those discussions as soon as those are able to, but we'll leave it at that. So thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, sir. That was good news. I had not realized. I know that they do the public hearings the public hearings in advance of any project and take input from the public. They usually don't get a whole lot on public projects, and so if one is inclined to show up at one of those, you may be the sole voice that they take into account, just as any other public body. So,
and I'm sorry I forgot to say the date and the time, but it's November the 7th from 4 to 6 p.m. here at the Centerview behind City Hall, for those who would like to come and give their voice.
Thank you, sir. I concur with all the comments this evening. Again, I want to extend a warm welcome to the American government students that are here this evening. And two other things. I'm beginning to see why Mr. Barber nominated me for Mayor Pro Tem this year. I think he's enjoying this way too much. And the final thing that I have, we all know that we have a world-class staff here at Raymore, all 100 or roughly so employees. One of the things that never ceases to amaze me in any organization, most organizations take on a major project, and if they do well, they report on that and then kind of rest on their laurels for at least a short time before they move on to the next project and tackle that. I have seen this staff time and time again, and tonight is a great example of tackling a big project and then within that taking on another project such as the bond refinancing. We just finalized our budget tonight, which is the biggest thing that we do throughout the year, and yet at the same time our staff along with our contracted folks came up with fantastic savings for us. So again, sir, I never tire of saying it. I hope you never tire of hearing it. Please pass on my appreciation and our appreciation to the entire staff for the fantastic work that you are doing for the citizens of Raymore. That's all I have this evening. We do have a reason to move into executive session tonight. At this time, I would entertain a motion to move into executive session.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Mr. Barber.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss litigation, personnel, and contractual matters as authorized by Missouri Revised Statute 610.021, subsections 1, 3, and 12.
I'll second.
There is a motion second on the floor. Is there any discussion? May we have the roll call vote, please, Mrs. Warner?
Councilmember Abdelgawad?
Yes.
Councilmember Barber?
Yes.
Councilmember Berenson?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Councilmember Circo?
Yes.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson?
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend?
Yes.
The motion passes. We will now move out of the council chamber to adjourn into executive session. We will return at the end of executive session just to adjourn this regular session meeting.